If you knew what you were getting into at the beginning of a project, you would probably never start. This project started with a simple idea and morphed into something a little different. As happens, once you start, you have no choice but to finish, and sometimes a little more quickly than you'd like. Projects last as long as we have available free time, not as long as we'd like them to. Sometimes compromises are made. Just getting materials can take days. Pre-ordering equipment, cleaning up the van so that things will fit. A lot has to happen before you start a project. And that is the start of the project, I guess. All I really wanted to do was to rearrange the equipment in the van to help me be a little more creative. Before the van, I would pack up the equipment I needed into my car and leave everything else at home. Not having the equipment with me was, of course, limiting. I'd see something that would be perfect, but I couldn't find the lens. After the van, I had all the equipment. And at first it was easy to find. Later, as the van got more and more complicated and more equipment, things got messy and I couldn't find anything. So now, I would leave a lot of times and not have the lenses or even the cameras that I wanted because it would take 10 or 15 minutes to find where they were in the mess. The solution is a toolbox with all the cameras on the bottom drawer, the lenses in the second drawer, and miscellaneous items in the other drawers. In this case, we're picking the Canon 1DS, the 14mm, and a Hasselblad 250 and teleconverter that makes it equivalent to a 500. The other thing I like is you can lock it all up, and even though the van's locked up, it's just a second level of security. One of the things that bothered me while I was out shooting was that I would always compromise on the equipment I would take because it was so hard to find in the way the van was set up. Every system had its own bag. But because I use vintage lenses, that means that my Canon would be in a whole different area than the Hasselblad lenses that I have. Very difficult. If I wanted to use the Fuji and I wanted to use my Hasselblad lenses, I would have to open up 3 or 4 different boxes and bags to do it all. And then I would load that into one camera bag that I would take with me. So I was always leaving here having made compromises in the equipment I wanted. Maybe like today I would want the 14. Well, I couldn't find it straight off. So I would go ahead and just take the 20. So this is the first trip with the new setup. Hopefully my mind won't constantly be thinking I have the wrong equipment. We're at Hollywood and Vine, and for the next hour or two we're going to spend just on these 4 corners. This, in the 20s and 30s, was the heart of Hollywood. The buildings housed offices for all of the studios that existed at that time. Of course, we're going to start with the iconic elements. These signs have been photographed millions of times, and with the 14, I think we might have gotten something different. Over 10 million people still visit this area every year. The stars on the ground feature the icons of the industry. Well, some of them. Some of them are complete unknowns. But it's hard to believe what has happened to this area. By 1956, when they started putting these stars down, it had been quite depressed. And they were trying to draw tourism. It kind of worked, but the area has never really rebounded. A couple of blocks away, you get a much nicer environment, but the stars in this area are really the premier ones from the old days. What's interesting is, even though these are mainly tourists coming, they don't really look at the stars at all. Of course, I'm here for photographs. and to see what we can come up with some street photography, some architecture, and hopefully some architectural details. This shot seems to work pretty good. I kind of had this abstraction in mind, and I think it actually works. What you love about living in a big city is there's all sorts of characters. Yeah, I look good. Here I set a camera on the ground just to see if anybody was looking at the stars at all. The reality is, they kept looking at the camera, not the stars. One of the things about working in this area is there's quite a few people, or there's nobody. Rarely do you get an individual by himself. And so from a street photography standpoint, it was a little more challenging than I thought it would be. All these people get stars. Half of them you'll never hear of. And if you Google them up, they won't have had much of a career. But that doesn't stop the tourists from crowding into the space and enjoying it. It's hard to believe that at one time this intersection was considered the glamorous place in Hollywood. Today it's closed restaurants and homeless people. What's nice about it are these buildings are from the 1920s and early 30s, and they have a lot of architectural detail. So if you're not shooting street photography, you can go ahead and shoot a lot of architectural photography and really have a great time. The next building is quite iconic, the Capitol Records Tower, and with the Hollywood sign right behind it. Overall, I was pretty happy with the details I got. This is why I took the 14mm lens. I wanted to be on the same side of the street as the subject and then show the buildings behind, and not have to shoot all the way across from the other side of the block. Here, you can see with the 250, you're really isolating the people. I think that's going to wrap up our trip to Hollywood and Vine. I think we got some good stuff, and I enjoyed myself tremendously. It's always fun to walk around these areas.
Well, overall, I think it worked pretty good. I knew exactly where things were going to be in here when I got back, in case I wanted to pick up some more equipment. So yeah, it really freed me up instead of worrying about where things were and thinking about it the whole time. I knew exactly where it was going to be, and I never even came back. Usually I do. Usually I feel like I missed something or I forgot something. And this time I just used what I had and I was happy with it. So for me, that's a win. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.
It's just a sunny day.